In America, it's become too hard to vote for too many people. This is especially true for Black and brown voters, Native American voters, new voters, elderly voters, formerly incarcerated voters, non-English speaking voters, voters with disabilities, and even voters whose totally valid votes get caught up in misinformation, conspiracy theories, and lies. You have to wonder, is America really the best democracy it can be? No. But All Voting is Local is here to change that. At All Voting, we fight for pro-voter policies that ensure voters can cast a ballot that will count. It's our relentless mission.
Not just in an election year,
but every year.
That means making sure all voters have a polling place in their neighborhood.
A polling place with enough resources and enough poll workers.
It means making sure everyone feels safe and everything runs smoothly.
No long travel time to vote.
No waiting in line.
No being turned away on the spot because their voter registration was wrongfully erased.
It also means tearing down the discriminatory barriers that have kept people out of our democracy for too long.
Particularly voters of color.
En particular a los votantes de color.
Such as strict voter ID laws,
the slashing of early voting access,
the removal of ballot drop boxes in our priority communities,
and the purging of voters from our voter rolls without basis.
It means making sure our voices are heard.
Our voices.
Our voices.
Our voices.
Everyone's voices, everyone's votes
are what make our democracy strong.
What makes this organization, this staff so special is how we bring a year-round singular focus on how elections are run. And we influence the state and local election officials who make those behind-the-scenes decisions. I wanted to get All Voting is Local off the ground because I knew there was a better way for our elections to run and work better for people, especially people who have been cut off from the ballot for centuries. It felt like this was a solvable problem, but we needed momentum to change it. And I also felt that the people making these decisions needed to hear more from the communities they're supposed to serve. These are local officials, and we needed to bring these demands directly to them. And so that's why we started All Voting is Local.
It's really common for people to think we should only pay attention to elections every 2 or 4 years when federal elections are held.
But the work of elections is actually happening all day, every day.
Where we vote, when we vote, and the way we vote.
Our lawmakers and election officials are deciding our election experience right now.
Right now.
All Voting works to ensure we never let opportunities for making critical changes to election administration pass us by. Our team, based here in Washington, D.C., provides a national perspective to the critical work happening on the front lines across 8 states: Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
In Arizona, we co-led state and national partners in securing more than 100 pro-voter requirements that will protect Arizona voters.
In Florida, we successfully pushed for a much-needed early voting site on the campus of Jacksonville's historically Black university, Edward Waters, as well as 4 other sites in this diverse county.
In Georgia, we're the in-state experts on hand counting. Hand counting is far less accurate, it takes longer, and it costs more in taxpayer dollars.
In Michigan, we champion those on the front lines of our democracy, like ensuring local clerks receive the funding, resources, and support they need to protect voters and voting access.
Our efforts have expanded access to the ballot for at least 30,000 Native American voters in Nevada.
In Ohio, we ensured 20,000 voters in public housing across Cleveland and Cincinnati had the requisite alternative ID to vote.
In Pennsylvania, we discovered that we have more power together. We built PA Voters Decide, which is the coalition that fights for the access for all Pennsylvania voters.
In Wisconsin, we lead the charge against election deniers and those who would subvert the vote, especially those in positions of power that oversee our elections.
That laser focus on state and local election administration, coupled with our incredible network of partners, positions us to fight voter suppression at its source and allows us to get out ahead of problems rather than waiting until the right to vote is taken away.
No one organization can push for fair, equitable and accessible elections alone.
That's why we center impacted communities in our work.
That's why we've built partnerships with more than 500 state and national pro-democracy organizations.
And that's why we've cultivated relationships with hundreds of local election administrators and officials.
And it's working.
It's working.
It's working.
It's working.
Let's be honest, there's still so much more work to do. Our country is at an unprecedented time in history. We can't settle for the status quo or back down from new and emerging threats to our democracy. It's time to build something better.
It's vital that our leaders protect voter access, not take it away.
That they speak the truth about our election systems.
And the people who run them, not spread lies and conspiracy theories.
That they provide election workers with the funding they need to do their jobs efficiently and without fear of harassment.
Not turn a blind eye to those who violate the law in an effort to overturn election results.
A restored trust in our election systems is imperative to protecting the freedom to vote.
Ensuring that every vote counts in every election.
We believe
a pro-voter future.
A pro-voter future.
A pro-voter future is possible.
A future where people are automatically registered to vote as soon as they're eligible.
A future where early voting hours and polling locations are expanded to allow voters to vote when it's convenient for them.
A future where universal vote by mail is an option for all voters.
A future where all voters have equitable access to the polls, regardless of the language they speak or the level at which they read or write.
A future where protections are in place to ensure election workers and volunteers can do their jobs without fear.
Pro-voter policies make voting easier,
safer, more fair,
and encourage more people to vote.
Not only that, but we have the data to prove that a majority of Americans
across political parties agree that voting should be as easy as possible.
And they support measures to do just that.
These policies aren't out of reach.
Some states across the country have adopted similar pro-voter policies.
We're building bridges with election officials who want to expand access to the ballot.
And working with partners to advance fair, inclusive rules on voter registration.
To remove barriers that make it more difficult for people to vote.
And to ensure every vote counts.
Every vote counts.
Cada voto cuenta.
Today's urgent threats require visionary, dynamic, and even radical strategies that charge ahead of new fronts for our democracy.
Democracy.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us in the fight to ensure that voters,
All voters.
All voters.
know that when they go to the polls, their votes will be cast and counted.
Together, let's leverage our collective power to build a democracy that works for us all.
And all means all.
All means all.
Todo significa todo.
All power to all voters.
All voting is local.